California is a state located in the western part of the United States that is renowned for many things, including its diverse geography, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and beautiful beaches. However, in recent years, the state has become infamous for its water crisis, which is getting worse with time. Water is a precious resource that is essential for life, and its scarcity can lead to significant economic, social, and environmental consequences. The situation in California is dire, with the state facing constant droughts, water restrictions, and record-breaking wildfires due to the shortage of water. The water problem in California is not a recent one, as it goes back thousands of years. The state's unique geographic circumstances are one of the main reasons for this issue. Understanding the source of California's demand for water is crucial to comprehend the magnitude of the problem. As of 2022, the state is home to almost 40 million people, and the human demand for water is significant. However, only about 10% of California's total water supply is consumed by people in various towns and cities, including Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento, and others. The agricultural industry is the largest consumer of water in California, accounting for about 40% of the state's total water supply. California's fertile Central Valley has highly rich soil and a warm Mediterranean-style climate, making it one of the most abundant breadbaskets globally. The state produces roughly one-third of America's vegetables and two-thirds of the country's fruits and nuts. The Central Valley alone produces over 8% of America's entire agricultural output by value and about a quarter of the nation's food supply. California farmers grow over 250 different crops, but almonds, in particular, garner the most attention. California dominates the almond industry, with around 80% of the world's supply produced in the state, worth approximately $6 billion a year. Almond production has increased more than eightfold since 1995, with demand surging in faraway places like India, East Asia, and Europe. Almonds alone account for about a quarter of California's entire agricultural exports. However, the almond crop is incredibly thirsty, consuming about 10% of California's entire human-use water. Additionally, 14% of the water used by humans in the state is used to grow alfalfa to feed cattle, while another 9% is used for livestock pasture. In total, about 80% of the water used by humans in the state is dedicated entirely to the agricultural industry, which feeds tens of millions of people across not only the United States but also the rest of the world. As the most populous state in the country and with the largest agricultural sector, California's droughts can have enormous economic and environmental impacts compared to other states. The state receives most of its water in the form of rainfall and snow, which varies significantly across the state. Westerly winds bring moisture from the Pacific Ocean into the state, initially impacting the many high mountain ranges in California. The air blowing in from the Pacific rises, cools, and forms precipitation, making the various western-facing sides of mountain slopes some of the rainiest parts of the state. Northwestern California is known for having a temperate climate with high levels of rainfall. In fact, the average annual rainfall rate in this region is approximately 13 millimeters, which is more than double the amount of rainfall that London typically receives in a year. However, while the northernmost half of the Central Valley in California experiences abundant rainfall from storms coming from the colder Pacific Northwest, the southernmost edges of the valley have significantly more desert-like conditions and receive substantially less rainfall. The towering mountains surrounding the state, such as the Sierra Nevada, the Cascades, and the Klamath Mountains, each have mountain-style climates with thick snow during the winter months that melts during spring and summer and fills California's many rivers, tributaries, and streams. However, to the east of these mountains lies a much drier rain shadow, where the westerly winds carrying moisture from the Pacific fail to climb higher than the tall peaks of the mountains. As a result, the areas to the east of these mountains receive substantially less rainfall and snowfall than the rest of the state, which is largely why the areas here are made up of the Sonoran and Mojave deserts. California's mountainous geography, directly adjacent to the Pacific Ocean, means that the vast majority of the state's rain and snowfall happens in the northern third of the state. This is probably the single most important fact to understand about California's water. Roughly 75% of the state's water supply comes from this northern third of the state above Sacramento, where only 20% of the state's population resides. Conversely, 80% of California's population lives in the lower two-thirds of the state, where only a quarter of the state's water supply originates. Therefore, massive volumes of water from the northern third of California are required to be transferred down to the south in order to meet their enormously larger demand. This makes the water management system within the state potentially the most controversial found anywhere in the world. On average, around 200 million acre-feet of water will fall upon California per year in the form of rain, snow, and imports from elsewhere. Half of that amount generally gets consumed by nature, evaporates, or falls back out into the Pacific, while the other half is consumed by humans. Roughly 80% of that human consumption is for agriculture, and the remaining 20% is for other uses. That means humans use about 100 million acre-feet of water per year in the state on average. However, this number fluctuates significantly depending on the type of year it is, ranging from plus or minus 40 million acre-feet, or about 40%, which is about enough water to completely submerge the entire state of West Virginia by a foot. Moreover, the vast majority of rain and snowfall in California occurs only during the usually wetter winter months of the state, between December and February, when massive volumes of snow usually falls upon the high peaks of the Sierra Nevadas, the Cascades, and the Klamath Mountains. A drier winter season than normal will have lasting consequences throughout the rest of the year or even beyond. The biggest difference in 2022 is that there have already been a couple of pretty bad years leading up to this point, which exacerbates the issue of water scarcity in the state. Over the past 2 decades, the American Southwest has experienced a prolonged period of drought, which some scientists refer to as a mega drought. This drought is considered to have started around the year 2000 and has continued for 22 years. This period is the driest ever recorded in the region since at least the year 800 C, more than 12 years ago. Even the coronation of Charlemagne as the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire took place during this period. California, in particular, has been severely affected by this mega drought. The state has experienced considerably less than average rainfall and snowfall over the past 22 years. At the same time, temperatures have been higher and evaporation of existing water has been greater, causing an enormous amount of stress on California's existing water system. The state's water system was built in the early and mid-20th century to bring water from the north of the state down to the south, where most of the population lies. This system comprises dozens of dams, reservoirs, and thousands of miles of pipes and aqueducts, serving tens of millions of people around the state. The two most critical components of this system are the Central Valley Project and the California State Water Project. The Central Valley Project distributes water for agricultural needs to the farmers of the Central Valley, while the California State Water Project supplies water to the large population centers in the southern part of the state, such as Los Angeles, Orange County, the Inland Empire, and San Diego. There are also additional systems, such as the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which pulls water into the city from the Owens River in the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains, and the Colorado River Aqueduct, which pulls in water from the Colorado River. All of these water systems combined have led some to label California as the most engineered state in the country. However, these engineering systems are only functional if the sources they pull water from are still providing that water. For example, in the case of the Colorado River specifically and the many reservoirs along its stream, they are all currently at cripplingly low historic water levels. Reservoirs on the river, such as Lake Powell in southern Utah and Lake Mead, the single largest water reservoir anywhere in the country inside of Nevada, are each approaching just 25% of their normal water capacities, with some 40 million people depending on the Colorado River and its various reservoirs for drinking water and power generation. The ongoing mega drought and depletion of water are causing an enormously stressful time across the American Southwest. Similarly, much of the rest of California is also experiencing low water levels in major reservoirs, such as Lake Shasta in Northern California and Lake Oroville at the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, which are both at historically low levels, with each approaching just 50% of their total capacity. California has been experiencing a severe drought for many consecutive years, with record low levels of rainfall and snowpack. This has caused significant damage to important reservoirs across the state, along with other environmental impacts. To replenish the water levels, California needs more precipitation, which has become increasingly scarce. The state's typical snowfall in April, when it is usually at its deepest, was only 10 inches last year, compared to the usual average of 26 inches. As a result, the snowmelt into the state's rivers, streams, and reservoirs was just 38% of what it typically is. This recent lack of precipitation in California is partly due to a meteorological event called La Nina, which occurs over the Pacific Ocean since the summer of 2020. La Nina has caused cooler than usual northern Pacific waters, reducing evaporation rates and pushing the polar jet stream further north away from California. This has resulted in less moisture and wind reaching California, leading to even worse drought-like conditions, less rainfall, and higher temperatures in the state. The higher temperatures also cause evaporative stress, which depletes soil moisture and leads to even hotter temperatures, creating a vicious cycle that is difficult to break. While California already has relatively high water usage compared to other states, this summer is expected to be especially difficult, with water authorities calling for a 35% reduction in usage across the system. Some farmers may need to be abandoned, with experts predicting up to 600,000 acres will be followed by the end of the summer, an area close to double the size of Los Angeles. The problem is further compounded by overpumping of underground aquifers, depleting their reserves rapidly. Farmers in the state will soon be left with limited options. Unfortunately, there are no easy solutions to this big problem. Mandatory cuts, water recycling programs, and investments into desalination technologies all have their own drawbacks and huge associated costs. The state needs to become more efficient and use less water going forward. California needs to be proactive today in order to avoid a complete water catastrophe in the future. It is essential to find a sustainable solution to the state's water problem, whether through better water management practices or more significant investments in new technologies. Whatever the solution may be, it is clear that California needs to act now to avoid a future water crisis.